week, meteorologist Christian Bridges told us about an omega block. This week, he's going to tell us about a different kind of blocking, the Rex block.
Yeah, so how is this different than the one we talked about last week? I didn't remember a Rex block. I've never heard of that.
Heard of it, yeah.
Yeah, kind of a little bit of an obscure weather term because it's a pattern that just doesn't happen very often. So, it's not something we talk about too often, but we're seeing one right now. And last week we had that omega block. Of course, that brought us, days upon days of rain. So first I want to break down what an omega block is again as a little refresher. Here is a look at what that looks like. It's so named because the jet stream takes the shape of the Greek letter omega. And you can see that sort of backwards U shape or upside down U shape there with the jet stream in the omega block. This is defined by an area of high pressure in the central U.S. with low pressure to the east and to the west. And this is exactly what we saw last week. And these patterns are called a blocking pattern for a reason. That's basically the atmosphere is all blocked up and it doesn't move. So we saw this all last week. It was very cool, very unsettled. Of course, we had plenty of rain, and that is why we saw that, is because of this omega block. Now, a Rex block is a little bit different, but the effects can be somewhat similar here in Maine. So let's talk about some of those differences between an omega block and a Rex block. Now, an omega block is just named because of the shape. It looks like the Greek letter omega. There you can see what a Greek letter omega looks like right there. You can see, again, the jet stream sort of takes that shape of the Greek letter omega. You've got a large high pressure with the low pressure to the east and west, and it is a long duration pattern. Now, a Rex block is named after a meteorologist, Daniel Rex, who first discovered this pattern, and it really is just one high pressure to the north, one low pressure to the south, and like the omega block, it is a long duration pattern that can tend to linger for quite a long time. So here's what that looks like on a weather map. Unlike the omega block, this one sort of looks like a backward S when it comes to the jet stream. You usually have the high pressure to the north and the low pressure to the south. And what this will do is it will bring very hot, unseasonably warm weather into places that are far to the north. So Minnesota, for example, has been seeing days of temperatures in the 90s, whereas places like Atlanta or in the southeast, Charlotte, North Carolina, they've been stuck in the 60s and low 70s with lots of rain. So kind of a inverse flip-flop weather here when we get one of these patterns. And we're going to start to feel some of the effects of this as it breaks down later this week when the rain will be returning. So things generally cooler under that low pressure, hot under that high pressure. And you can see the impact of that. Here's our forecast for today. Notice Portland, only in the upper 50s, low 60s here today. But notice northern North Dakota, upper 80s. It was close to 100 near the Canadian border earlier in the week. And you can see all that heat in the central U.S. Dallas in the 90s, hundreds down in Texas. Now look at Atlanta and D.C., only in the 60s in D.C., only in the 70s in Atlanta. So it's kind of flip-flopped weather. Normally we would expect 60s and 70s maybe up into the northern Great Plains. But instead we're seeing that in the southeast, and they're kind of trading places and getting that hot weather. And one effect of this also is flooding with all that rain and that low pressure over the East Coast lingering for days. Flooding is a concern. We've got flood watches down near D.C. all the way through North Carolina and up into Pennsylvania as well. So while I don't think we're going to see any flooding from this later this week, we'll certainly get some rain as this Rex block breaks on down. So anytime you guys hear about a blocking pattern, you can expect the weather to be kind of wacky or a little bit out of whack because they kind of just tend to, bunch things up in the atmosphere and then nothing moves on. So the weather tends to be very persistent, and sometimes it can be a little strange too.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of strange and wacky, when I first saw that temperature in Bismarck, well, that's got to be a typo. That can't be 88, like 2/8, right?
Yes, and it was, it was 99 there earlier this week, so it was even hotter. I know. So, while we've been, hoping to get to 70 degrees some days, places to our west, well into the 80s. And it's kind of funny, even just a couple of years ago on this date here in Portland, we were well into the 80s as well. So just goes to show you can kind of get anything this time of year.
All right, and if you have any weather-related questions you'd like to ask our Weather Authority team, you can email them at weather@wgme.com. And a Presque Isle teacher was honored this week.